You know, through the almost 4 decades now, I've watched believers putting themselves underneath the curse of the law over and over and over. Observing the Sabbath days, you know, to, and, we're not just talking about observing a day to rest. I mean, we're talking about someone that thinks that if you don't observe the Sabbath day, then you're sinning. And this, I mean, you got to understand the outward forms of the law. When Jesus healed that lame man by the pool of Bethesda in John chapter 5 on the Sabbath day and commanded him to pick up his bed and walk with it, and the Jews got him to set it back down, and he found him later in the temple, and he said, "Look, you're made whole. Go and sin no more, lest a worse thing come upon you." And immediately that man picked up his bed, went and found those Jews and told them it was Jesus that healed him. And we've got to see that what Jesus is saying, lest a worse thing come upon you, is talking about that unclean spirit that he delivered that man of, because he was in his condition 38 years. And you read Mark and Matthew talking about that unclean spirit that's gone out of a man. He says it goes through dry places seeking rest. He says when it finds no rest, he returns to the house from where it came out. And finding it swept, clean, and unoccupied, goes and finds 7 other spirits more wicked than himself, and goes and enters back into that house, and the latter state is worse than the beginning. I mean, we got to understand putting ourselves back under the law. Paul describes it in Galatians 4 as putting ourselves back underneath the weak and beggarly elements of the world. He says, "For an heir, as long as he's a child, differs nothing from a servant, though he be Lord of all, but is under tutors and governors until the time appointed of the Father." He says, "Likewise we, when we were children, were in bondage under the elements of the world, until the fullness of time came, when God sent forth his Son, made of a woman, made under the law, that he might redeem us who were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. And because we are sons, he sent forth the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. Therefore you are not servants, but sons in him, through faith." And to put ourselves back underneath the law is to put ourselves back underneath the weak and beggarly elements of the world, and we need to understand that truth. If you want any power in your life for obedience,